Why? Why does there always have to be so much to do? Ah. Ouch. One of the bad things about having wood chips in the garden is that they're particularly prickly and get stuck on your feet because I like to go barefoot all the time. There's always so much to do in the garden. It seems like I can't keep up with it. Granted, I do only put in about 30 minutes or 45 minutes a day in the garden because I've got a full-time job. I'm raising 3 kids. I have a wife. I've got chickens as well, so they take some time away from the garden. I do whatever I can though. I do implement many different techniques when gardening to reduce the amount of time that I have to spend in the garden, but it seems like it's just never ending. Welcome back to Expedition Homestead, the channel where we build your passion for growing. My name is Ripley, and we better feed these chickens before they make too much noise for us here in the video. I'll show you exactly how we do that. We're gonna give them a snack right now. Right here next to their coop, I've got some wild lettuce growing with bugs all over it. There's little aphids and ants and all kinds of stuff. And then we've got some dandelion greens, some sorrel, some wood violets. We're just gonna take this in here throw it over to them, and that ought to shut them up for a little bit so we can film. See how well that works? Nice and quiet now, not even making a peep. We can continue on with our video. Today in the garden, I've got some experiments that I want to set up using a raised garden bed. We've got a raised garden bed that I've got to build and put together by Ali. And then I'll be filling it with some peculiar materials that people don't normally fill their garden beds with, and it's going to be part of an experiment here on the farm. Not really a farm, but it's as close as I'm going to get to a farm for a while, so we'll call it that. We're going to do some experiments with the soil to show you that sometimes breaking the rules is just the best way to go about things when growing in the garden. And I use the term best kind of lightly. You might not grow the very best fruits and vegetables and flowers ever by using methods like this. Yes, there might be some ways where you could possibly get a little bit bigger of a harvest out of them. But this method right here that we're using to fill these raised beds is going to be free. It's not going to cost me any of that good old US dollar to fill these beds with soil, because the soil we're using is not even going to be soil at all. Come along with me and I'll show you exactly what we're talking about. Walking past our garden beds here, all 9 of the beautiful, glorious, abundant garden beds that we have in our backyard. Takes us over to this spot right here. These are our compost bins. We've been composting everything in the garden. I mean everything. Every last bit of root that we pull out from the weeds, dandelions, wood violets, sunflower cuttings, wild lettuce, all the stuff from our past years that we haven't used in the kitchen either goes right into the soil in our raised beds, or it gets thrown onto this heaping pile of messy gunk and rotting vegetables over there. We've got some bags of vegetables that got thrown in there because our freezer lost power and everything went bad. So I was too busy to dump them out in the compost. So instead I just threw them on there, and they've been rotting there for about a week and a half. So we've got all that good stuff in there. That's lots of good bacteria that we're going to be adding into our little mixture that we're going to be creating today as well. As you can tell, this isn't a very fancy compost section at all. We've got one side from last year and then this side from this year. As I said, I mix everything in here. There's nothing fancy to it. I don't turn it, I don't till it, I don't mix it up. And we don't even have any sort of like barrier stopping this stuff from spilling out like some people say you should do. In fact, you know, it is recommended, but you don't need it. This will still compost into some incredible soil. And in our case, it's going to be a base to our raised garden bed that we got and that we're going to be putting together today. So this is going to be one of our ingredients that we have. Let me go show you ingredient number 2. Well, what are those? Those are just my tomato plants. Don't mind those. Just average tomatoes, that's all. This right here is ingredient number 2 for our raised garden bed. I'll tell you what happened here with this one. We Energies, they came by and safeguarded our tree that we had in the front yard because we plan on doing a lot of pruning to it. But in the process of doing that, even though I was told that they would chip it up and at least dump it in our driveway for us to use up the wood chips, instead of doing that, they decided to just dump it all in the front yard. So we'll be taking a lot of these greens and then the smaller branches and everything and filling in the bottom half or so of our raised bed. Even though that's not going to use up even a millionth of what we have here, it's going to use up some of it. Basically, the tree was touching the power lines, and now it's on our yard. So that's fun. That's going to be ingredient 2 of 2 for our raised bed. Besides some water, we're going to get some wood chips from the trees that we mulch up front. We've got that green matter. We've got compost. The compost is full of green matter and brown matter, so we've got nitrogen and carbon. Some of the compost has been broken down for about 1.5 years. Some of it is fairly new. So think of this kind of like a twist on lasagna gardening for our raised garden bed. All it takes is a couple of branches and some compost that we've got sitting around, and there you go. We're going to fill up our raised bed. The trouble is going to be putting this thing together now because we only have so much time and I've got a million other things to do here in the garden. So I'll be back in a jiffy and let you know how it went. I am going with the 96 by 24 inch option. There's all kinds of different shapes you can make with this thing. As long as they have 4 corners, you'll be good. You can make them short and fat, you can make them squares, you can make them long and skinny like the one I'm doing here. Whatever shape you choose, you don't have to choose the blue. I just got sent the blue one because it was free. So thank you so much for sending me a garden bed. But letting you, the viewer, know you don't have to choose blue. They got other options in there as well. Okay, we've got it all together. Now I've just got to move it. Got it all together. I just got to move it over here. For this out of the way. We wouldn't want anybody to know that I have kids. All right, I'm just going to pick this thing up. Scoot it over here. And right there is where it's going to go. We're going to have to level it out a little bit before I tighten everything up. The blue's not that bad. I can live with it. I can definitely live with that. Putting together that garden bed was not too bad. The worst part of it was when the demon spawn that we call mosquitoes came out. Little bloodsuckers, turning every little enjoyable experience into one of suffering and pain and misery. That's what those things are. I don't know why they're here. But besides that, it was fine and dandy. Now we're just taking up some of these branches, this organic matter, all this carbon that has been sequestered into the wood, chopping it up and filling in the bottom layers of this garden bed. Now it doesn't matter what kind of wood you're going to do this with if you do this at home. Again, you don't have to do this. It's not the right way to do this whatsoever. This is, in fact, kind of the wrong way to do this. The absolute right way to do this would be to get a really nice mix of soil that you spent $400 on. But Lord knows we ain't got that kind of money to spend on a garden bed. So we're going to do it this way. And I believe that doing it this way is going to create a very powerful bacteria and fungi level down beneath our plants that will help them grow in the long run. This stuff is going to break down and turn into soil. Of course, we're going to continue filling this garden bed with all the different compost and green matter that we chop up throughout the seasons as well, and keep on filling this and tilling that stuff into the soil every single season. We will implement those practices as always. So it's not like we're just doing this here and then we're never going to have to touch this bed again. Creating and sustaining living soil is a practice that is continuous throughout the life cycles and the spans of our garden beds. Whether they are a raised bed or in the ground, we still got to amend and build the soil throughout the years that we're growing in it. Sorry if my voice sounds raspy. I inadvertently choked on a cucumber that I just harvested from the garden, and it's stuck in my throat. After chopping up a bunch of these branches in here, I realized I still have an abundance of wood chips to use up, and that would probably also be a really good idea to implement in this garden bed. So that's also something I'm going to use to fill this up. All right, we got 3 wheelbarrows of wood chips in here. Just going to do the rain dance real quick on all of this. Got to make sure it's nice packed down so we can fill up the space with our compost. Either that's going to be giving me good luck for growing, or this garden bed will be forever cursed. I don't know. Let's get some compost. As any healthy compost bin would have, we've got leafy greens sprouting up all over the place here. Ouch! And Canada thistle, of course. I'm just going to throw all that in there. I would normally feed it to the chickens, but chickens are full for the day. So I'm just going to utilize it here in this raised bed. Throw that all in there, and then we're going to start shoveling up some of this stuff here. Oh yeah. Look at that. There's a beautiful chunk right there. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is unconventional, but I promise you, it will work. If you plant your seeds in the ground and you do a couple of simple things like watering them and keeping the soil moist and get the bacteria going and the fungi growing and microbes and all that good stuff, you'll be able to grow some plants in there. I might even throw in some urine. I think I'm going to start collecting that because we've got lots of carbon in here, but I've got to add some nitrogen, and very much better source than our own pee for that stuff. So yeah, it's good stuff. Now we got to the real good stuff down in the bottom of that compost bin. It's basically soil at that point. We dug a little bit lower than actual soil level too, so we could get some of the native microbes in there as well. That way we inoculate that into this entire mixture here. But boy, it really does take a lot to fill up these beds. So if you weren't utilizing your own resources, I can imagine that it would be a little bit strenuous on the checkbook. And I don't know about you, but I am in the business of teaching people how to garden for very low cost. Now, to be completely transparent and fair, I will probably end up buying a single bag or two of potting soil in order to get this top layer good enough to plant seeds in if we are planting seeds, or if we're putting tubers in here for our dahlias, then I still might use that bag of topsoil right above all of this stuff, just so it's easier for transplanting and whatnot. All right. But for right now, we've got to get this stuff breaking down as fast as we can. So what we're going to do at this point, I'm going to get these sticks out of the top of here. Don't really want all this stuff at the surface. I throw a bunch of sticks and twigs in with my compost bin. I feel like it overall helps the entire ecosystem in there with fungi and whatnot. But get those out of there. What we need to do now is just soak this entire thing. I mean, soak it with water. I really should just put a sprinkler on here and let it go for like half an hour. I've really got to completely soak all of this stuff up, because that's just going to speed up the process. It's going to bring all of the sediment down into the wood chips as well. Another reason why we're soaking this is because if it is moist and really wet deep inside of there, it will break down faster because it'll be heating up a little bit more. And the moisture is going to act a little bit like a heat sink. So as we all know, the more heat, the more it's going to decompose and break down. So that's going to be the name of the game at this point in this garden bed's life. So we're not going to be planting in it right away. We're probably not going to plant in it this summer, but we might get some fall cover crops in here to start getting the soil living and active and everything. And then afterwards, next year, we'll probably be planting some dahlia cuttings in here and growing some tubers. So that is going to be a blast. That's what this whole garden area back here is going to be for, is mostly our cut flowers and everything, as well as I'm sure we're going to get a couple of fruit trees in here. I've been watching a couple of really interesting YouTubers talk about how to keep your fruit trees small and how to grow small fruit trees and still have them produce a lot of fruit. So that's going to be something that we're implementing in our area over here, because the wood chips are going to be perfect for creating the ideal environment for those fruit trees to grow. I think that's about wraps it up for today's episode. I'm just going to be here watering for the next 3 hours. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, and clearly you did if you're still watching, subscribe if you haven't already. And there's this cool little bell button down there that you can hit so you're notified whenever we come out with new videos. We've got stuff coming out all year round. I plan on doing more and more experiments as we go on and advance in our gardening journey. I hope you advance with us. Happy gardening, and we'll see you in the next episode.